All right, the clock has hit 7, so we are going to get started. Welcome everyone to Help. My kid wants to go to art school. 5 ways to prepare your creative child for college and beyond. Um, we know that preparing a child can be a baffling process. You have questions about financial aid, about the various deadlines, multiple college applications. That stuff can be frustrating on its own, but then add to that equation a student who's interested in going to school for art and design and the current situation that we have now with a lot of us being at home. There's a lot to juggle around, right? As we're trying to work through the college application process and preparing our students for the college application process. So today is going to cover 5 key ways that you can best prepare your child for a degree in art and design and applying for schools of art and design, including College for Creative Studies. So before we jump into today's presentation, I do want to introduce who we have on the call here from CCS's perspective. So my name is Brandy Keeler. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions here at CCS, and I'm joined today in the chat room by Carla Gonzalez, who is our Director of Admissions. We're also joined by Sabrina Nelson, who is not only a CCS graduate, but also one of our admissions counselors and a mother of 2 CCS students. So she's had a CCS student graduate from the school, and she has a current student in their freshman year at CCS, so knows a lot about the school. And then for those of you tuning in here from YouTube Live, we have Hannah Clark, who is our events coordinator here in the admissions office, and she'll be fielding the questions from YouTube. And we are all very, very excited that you've taken time to join us on the couch today. So we are going to get started with our presentation here, starting with a question for you, actually. Before you start to ask us questions, we have a question for you, and this is going to be an interactive poll. And the question is, how do you feel about helping your child apply to college for art and design? So the way that you can interact with this poll, you can either open another browser window or use your phone. And the website link is at the top, or you can text. So you can respond by going to pollev.com/admissionscc381. And I just want to get a feel from the folks who are attending here today. How do you feel about having your child apply to school for art and design? So when you log onto that website on your phone or browser, you'll see a menu like this. Why don't you go ahead and just fill out that question right there and let us know how you're feeling. So I see we currently have somebody who chimed in. They're excited and eager to help their child apply to art and design school. Any other feelings, thoughts, questions about helping your child apply to art school? Oh, I see some more votes coming in. I'm going to give you guys a few more seconds to get your vote in, get your answer in, and then we'll move forward. Oh, wow. So we got some folks all over the board here. We have some folks who are nervous. They don't want their child to be a starving artist, which is clearly understandable. We have some folks who are confused about the process for applying to design colleges, specifically as it's different from traditional colleges. We have a lot of folks who are excited, which is really great to see. And some folks are confident. They're looking to pick up a few tips and tricks. I'm seeing no one choose D, which is exciting to hear. Awesome. Awesome. So overall, the feeling is excited, but we have some information to help those who would answer anyway to this poll. We just want to get a feel for the room. So let's get into the information today. There are 5 ways that we're going to cover in the presentation today. One is destroying that starving artist myth. The second is helping students to assemble their portfolio to apply. The third is how to apply early, understanding deadlines and financial aid. The fourth is the specific things to research when looking into a college for art and design. And the fifth is letting your student lead the process. So I'm going to stop my video here and keep going through the slides to really allow you to focus on the information that we have here today. Starting with how it all gets started, right? Starting with number one, destroying the starving artist myth. If you want to help your student pursue this path, you have to help them understand the viability of this industry, right? It's hard to pursue a path when you feel from the outset that there may not be success on the other end of that, right? It could be scary to even feel like it's worth filling out an application. Artists and designers are in demand. In the US alone, there are nearly 700,000 businesses that employ millions of people. Artists and designers make up more than 2 million of those workers, right? So in the US alone, millions of people are actively working as artists and designers. And according to the National Endowment of Arts, the arts and design contribute to $760 billion of the US economy, right? And they employ more than the performing arts and sports industries combined. Working artists and designers influence every facet of visual culture that we experience. For example, they may not run in the Olympics, but they design the shoes that the runners wear, the gear that they use, the websites used to promote or experience the Olympics online, right? They design the shoes and accessories we wear on a day-to-day basis. They design and create the products we use every day. They create the concepts and characters for the TV shows we watch, right? For the art direction and the commercials in between those TV shows, they're making that content. They produce the films that we enjoy, right? When you're sitting through, this is a great assignment that I tell students and parents to do, just to get an idea for what types of careers are out there. Sit through the end credits of a film and just see how many of those people are actors and voice actors versus how many of those people are the designers, the editors, the producers, the directors, right? There are a ton of them. Artists and designers are craftsmen and women, right? They're producing the things that shift culture and influence culture. They make our jewelry, the textiles on our furniture, the furniture itself, the puppets that we see in film. They design the interiors of our hospitals, our airports, our offices, our places of worship, our vehicles, and our commercial spaces where we shop. They design logos that we see on packaging for every product that we use. They design the vehicles that get us around this planet, whether it be a car, motorcycle, boat, jet, bike, plane. They innovate the future of how we move through autonomous vehicle design. They shoot the images, right, that we see on billboards, online, and in magazines, whether it's commercial photography for the industry, documentary photography for the New York Times, or fine art photography that we'll see in galleries. They create the content that we see online, in media, and on social media. They speak on behalf of brands, on behalf of social causes, on behalf of political parties and celebrities, right? And this isn't even counting the fine art side of things, right? The folks who are making the art on the walls of the museums that we visit, but also the people who are operating those museums. They're the folks who are doing the curatorial work, choosing the work that goes on the walls. They're doing education. They're influencing the future of art and design through our classrooms. There are all different types of paths for creative students to pursue through a path in art and design, right? And so we want to really banish that myth that artists, if they pursue their passion, will starve. A great example from CCS is actually Veronica Scott. She is one of our product design graduates from CCS. And while majoring in product design, she took a class assignment to design for a social need, to fill a need. And she designed a coat, that the one she's wearing here on screen, that transforms into a sleeping bag from a winter coat. It was designed to preserve a sense of dignity for people living on the street, experiencing homelessness. She now runs a nonprofit organization here in Detroit called the Empowerment Plan. And the goal of her company is to train and employ homeless folks, people experiencing homelessness who live in shelters, so they can gain a skill, earn a living wage, and create a more sustainable living situation for themselves and their family. The Empowerment Plan, this company she started from a junior year assignment at CCS, has gotten over 50 individuals and their families out of the situation of homelessness. She's been able to donate over 250,000 of these coats across the country and across the world to developing countries. And she's been the youngest person to win the JFK New Frontier Award for this work. Carolyn Kennedy actually said that she is changing the world one coat at a time. And though she's receiving national attention, she's doing that here in Detroit, changing lives from where she started school. This is the potential for students pursuing art and design in college, right? And if they aren't starting their own companies like Veronica, they may work at companies they've always dreamed of working at. These are some of the companies where our alumni are working: Nike, Apple, Disney, Google, CNN, Toyota, the MoMA, Netflix, Ford, Chrysler, National Geographic. There's a laundry list, right? So these are all examples. These slides that I'm showing you are all examples of what CCS students have been able to do from graduating with a degree path here, right? And CCS has a 62% graduation rate for our graduates, which is higher than the national average for colleges, which is 46%, and even higher than the private traditional school percentage, which is 50.8%, right? So we want to banish that myth and make sure that students are doing their research into what real careers in art and design look like. Graphic design is not the only practical path for art-interested kids. I want to make sure to emphasize that, because we have a lot of kids that say, oh, I do graphic design because it's the surefire way. There are a lot of surefire ways to do what you love and make a living with that. So that's tip number one. We're going to move on to tip number two, which is a big part of the admissions process: helping your student assemble their portfolio. A big part of this process is understanding that various schools have different requirements for portfolios. Right? So for example, if a student were to apply to CCS, we don't require a theme in the portfolio. Other schools do. Some schools require not only a theme, but they also require specific assignments or specific type of work in the portfolio. Some schools require where you have work specific to your major. CCS does not require that, with the exception of our concept design program, which goes to show that some majors even have different portfolio requirements. So you want to make sure your student has a good in-depth understanding of the portfolio requirements for the differing schools that they're applying to, and not submitting a blanket portfolio to meet the needs of all the schools. There are a few different ways that students can start to prepare their portfolio, which I really want to speak to. First is understanding that there are portfolio day opportunities. Now, given the fact that we're all at home, I would encourage you to look into virtual portfolio days. Those exist outside of the time that we're in right now, but that's a way where students can submit their work online and have their work reviewed by various schools. But there are other ways where students can prepare their portfolios. For example, doing an informal portfolio review with an admissions counselor. CCS is currently doing these digitally for students, where students can meet on Zoom like we're doing now and show their work with an admissions counselor. They can also email, text, Snapchat, Instagram, send work in any means necessary digitally, and receive feedback from their admissions rep. So ask the schools if they have opportunities for students to do informal portfolio reviews before submitting a final portfolio. We also encourage students to look into dual enrollment classes. Dual enrollment classes, like the ones that we offer here at CCS or even at community colleges, where students are able to take some foundation art and design classes, can really help them to build their portfolio early on. One thing that's interesting to know is that the CCS START Scholarship, which is part of our dual enrollment program, offers $3,369 towards the cost of tuition. So many students are eligible to receive additional funds via the state of Michigan, if you're here in Michigan, to do dual enrollment here. And again, for those of you in other states, you can look into dual enrollment for the colleges near you. Another thing to consider is AP and IB art classes. So AP and IB art classes allow students to take some of those foundation drawing and design classes while they're still in high school, but also build their portfolio and earn college credit early on. And the way that they can earn college credit specific to CCS is scoring a 4 or higher on that test. But typically we see students who are taking AP and IB classes, they have a higher level of understanding of work, which can contribute to their portfolio. Also, many schools have a National Honor Art Society, and that's a great way for students to show art leadership and build some specific work for their portfolio as well. One thing that we do tell students and parents is that we also encourage you to work on your portfolio pieces outside of the classroom assignments that you're given. This is a great way to differentiate the work in your portfolio from your peers, right? If everyone's doing the same assignment, portfolios can start to look monotonous or the same, even with students having different skill sets. And so working on your own passion projects, working on assignments that you're giving yourself outside of school can help. And we actually have some examples of some assignments that you can do on your own outside of your class on CCS's portfolio requirements page of our website. And now is a great time, actually. Now that everyone is at home, right, for a certain amount of time, this is a great time for students to start working on extra portfolio prep online. Clearly, students have access to free resources like YouTube, but also there are some paid online places where students can take classes like Skillshare or LinkedIn Learning, where they can really strengthen a specific skill. This is the best possible time while students are at home to take advantage of opportunities to strengthen their work and build their portfolio. And again, we are currently working in our office to review students who are interested in portfolio feedback. And you don't have to be a senior in order to get portfolio feedback. We have juniors, sophomore, freshmen, and even sometimes middle school students who are just asking for feedback, and we are willing to help with that. So just to cover everything I just mentioned, look into National Portfolio Day events. Obviously, when we're all outside the home, those will be happening in person, but there are virtual opportunities for those. Ask for informal portfolio reviews with admissions reps before submitting a final portfolio. Look into the dual enrollment and community college classes for art and design near you. See if there are opportunities to build that portfolio of work. Again, if you have AP or IB classes in your high school, those are great ways to build work for your portfolio. As well as National Honor Art Society, and working on non-classroom art assignments. Okay. Now let's talk about tip number 3, applying early and applying for financial aid. Right? Many art colleges are private and may cost more than a state school or community college education, but that doesn't mean these educations aren't affordable. By understanding the financial aid setup that their desired college has, students can best prepare for their chances of success for getting scholarship and financial aid. And many application deadlines are before students receive their first set of senior grades. So it's important to understand the timing of things. For example, with CCS, our application actually opens August of a student's summer prior to senior year. So for example, students interested in applying for fall 2021, the application actually opens August 1st of 2020, right? And so students want to start this process now if they're a junior, right? They want to start this process of preparing their portfolio and getting feedback now because they want to start to fill out their applications in August. I also want to emphasize that there are different deadlines depending on schools. For example, some schools have early decision, which is a binding commitment to the school if they're accepted. CCS, however, has early action, which is where students apply by December 1st prior to the year they're interested in entering, and they are considered for our highest merit-based scholarships, right? So that's important to know that there are deadlines that can influence the amount of scholarship you're even considered for. And with CCS, we obviously have a priority deadline of February 1st, where students are still considered for generous scholarships. And then after February 1st, we still consider students for scholarship. It's not that highest amount as we're considering students for as December 1st, but then we're doing rolling admissions, right? And students don't actually have to commit to our school until May 1st, while other schools have differing deposit deadlines. So it's important to look into those for the schools that a student is interested in. And applying early, whether a school offers merit-based scholarship like we do or not, applying early matters, especially when it pertains to the FAFSA. So FAFSA is a form that permanent residents and U.S. citizens can qualify for, where they fill out their financial information of their household and are considered for federal and state funding to help cover their tuition costs. We encourage students to apply early for this one because there are specific grants that you may be eligible for your state. For example, in Michigan, typically the deadline is March 1st, but you want to start in October 1st so we can get you your financial aid award package early, right? So you can use that information to make a decision. But also, we have our own grants here at CCS that we can consider students for. So these are separate from federal grants and federal funding. Our CCS tuition grant, we can't consider students for until they complete a FAFSA. So we encourage students to complete the FAFSA and include our school code, for example, early on in the process. And I want to emphasize for all families out there, you should Always apply for a FAFSA regardless of your family's income. It makes no sense to lose out on free money by not completing a free form, right? So we encourage students to complete the FAFSA. One important reason that is important for our school is because we award a lot of scholarships, right? Millions of dollars, in fact, of scholarships and grants go out to our students annually. And so students who complete the application on time and fill out that FAFSA, 98% of our applicants receive some form of scholarship and grant combination, right? Or loan and employment assistance that's helping them to make CCS more affordable. In fact, this financial assistance that we offer helps to reduce the actual cost of tuition on average by 40%, right? That's just for students applying by the deadline and submitting a FAFSA. And we know this question was sent over earlier, so I want to address this, that students may end up taking out loans, right? That's not uncommon, but I will talk through our loan default rate shortly, which is really important. Another thing for students to consider, though, is the external scholarships, right? Outside of merit-based scholarships that they can look for. Typically, there are regional art competitions like Scholastics or the Ohio Governors or Texas Vaz, or Illinois has IHSAE. These are opportunities for colleges to know more about your skill sets and possibly award scholarships. So everything you see listed on the screen here, CCS has additional scholarships for outside of our merit-based scholarships that students can be considered for. Right? So you want to share your involvement with the colleges that you're interested in and ask if they provide scholarships for the groups that you're currently participating in. Now, let's talk about loans, because that's a big conversation for a lot of families. Private schools often require families to take out loans, right? I do want to emphasize that loans are not the end of the world, right? I often talk to my students about the difference between having debt and being in debt. CCS, like I mentioned earlier, offers millions of dollars of financial aid assistance. But even with the loan debt, 42% of our students graduate with no debt. And for those that are graduating with debt, our students, about 95% of those who take out loans are able to repay their loans. Our loan default rate is actually only 5.2%, and the national average is about 10.3%, right? As a CCS graduate myself, I can speak from experience. I pay off my loans, it's possible, right? And many of our students are seeing this happen because the employment rate of our school, right? Because once they're graduating with this private school education, it's setting their resume apart, their portfolios are really top notch. They are starting with salaries on average of $51,000 to $81,000 and are able to make payments on their loans without issue, right? And pay those off in a timely manner. So we do want to tell students that, yes, loans may be a part of the financial aid conversation, but they are not the end of the world. They are quite common for private school educations. In conclusion for this section, I also want to make sure you understand that you should not assume the cost of a school based on its sticker price. So like you saw with CCS, 98% of our students are receiving that financial aid. You don't really know how much school will cost for you until you complete the application process and the financial aid process, filling out that FAFSA. So a lot of our students, they say, oh, I don't think I can come, but they haven't completed the application, right? They haven't submitted their portfolio, or they haven't completed a FAFSA. And so we often tell them, just try, right? You don't lose out anything on completing the free process. And oftentimes those students are really pleasantly surprised. Like I said, on average, their tuition may be cut by 40%. And then they say, oh, this is more possible. Right? And there is a difference between the value that you get from a college versus the cost, right? That's the return on investment that our students are seeing. Specific to CCS, as an example, both Money and Pay Scale magazines say we're a best return on investment college. The students who are investing in their education here are seeing that back in their salaries plus, and are able to succeed and thrive once they're done with the program. So make your decision after you receive your financial aid package from the school options that you're considering, and always pair with a financial aid counselor to discuss your questions and concerns before making a final choice. All right. So let's move on to tip number 4, doing your research, right? That seems like a pretty obvious thing, but let's talk about some of the things that you can specifically research, right? There are nuances of a student's field that can help them choose a school that's best for them as it pertains to art and design and beyond. So these are some things that we encourage students to ask the universities that they're looking into, right? Asking if you're going into an art program, is the major focus that I'm going into, or is it an interdisciplinary path, right? Or do I start off in my major? Do you have an undeclared option or a foundation year? For example, with CCS, we are typically a very focused curriculum. Our students have 4 years in their major at CCS, but students start off in their major first semester, freshman year, right? So they are starting off hitting the ground running, but we also offer an undeclared major where students can come in and for their first semester, take a class that allows them to explore the intersections of art and design. And at the 14th week of their schooling here, choose the major that they then use for the rest of their 4 years at CCS. Some schools, you go in and you're interdisciplinary, you're exploring art and design the 4 years, versus CCS, you may come in transportation design and do that for 4 years, right? Some schools have a first year where it's a foundation year, where you're taking that beginning drawing and beginning design all of freshman year. At CCS, those are integrated with your major. So we are strengthening your foundation classes at the same time that you're starting to build your portfolio for your major, which is why our students are often getting internships in junior year, because they have a built and sufficient portfolio early on. These are things you want to ask the schools you're researching. You also want to look at the difference between specialized art study at a specialized art study versus art at a larger university, right? What is the percentage of art and design that you'll be taking while you're enrolled in a College of Art and Design? For example, at CCS, 2/3 of a student's time in our curriculum is spent in studio classes, actually producing work, and the remaining third of their time is in their general education or liberal arts classes. Sometimes that's flipped if you're going to a larger university, right? So you may take a ton of general education classes and a smaller amount of studio classes. That's actually one of the things that differentiates the colleges that are accredited by the Independent Colleges of Art and Design, which is ACAD. ACAD has a requirement of studio hours, that students are actually in studio classes producing work, and that's what sets us apart. So that's something to look into. You also want to look at the difference between semesters versus quarter hours versus trimesters, as this can not only impact the cost of a school, right, if you're being charged per quarter versus per semester, but it can also impact a student's transferability if a student ends up changing their mind. For example, we have students sometimes who want to transfer from a college that only offered quarter hours, and those hours have to be combined to equal a class that they want to take at a semester granting college, right? So you want to look into these things as you're evaluating the colleges that you're looking at. Another thing that you want to look into and research is what the faculty are doing who are teaching the classes in these universities and colleges. So for example, at CCS, our faculty are working currently in the industry. So as a great example, Tim Flattery, our department chair of entertainment arts, he's currently a concept artist working in the industry. He's worked on films like Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Infinity War, Men in Black 1 and 2, Captain Marvel, Godzilla, Batman. Like, there's a laundry list, right? He's actively working on films and bringing that industry knowledge to the classroom setting for our students. That is not uncommon. That's actually pretty much the standard for our faculty members. They're actually in their practice, whether it's fine arts, crafts, or the design disciplines. And so that's something you want to ask, right? It's one thing for a faculty member to have learned something in college and then be talking about something theoretically, and another to bring that industry knowledge to the classroom. Another thing that is important to ask school is if housing is required for freshmen. Is parking free? These are things that impact costs, and a lot of families I see assume the answer to these questions. For example, at CCS, a lot of folks may not know, but we have dorms. We actually have two dorm facilities on our campus, both apartment and loft style dormitories. But housing is not required for our freshmen. So that wouldn't be something that students want to calculate into the cost of school, because it's not required that students live on campus. Obviously, if you're out of state, you may want to, but you have the ability to stay with a family member or stay off campus, which can, depending on the area you're in, help with cost. And parking is free, for example, at our school, where some schools charge for parking. And so students can park and come to campus and leave as they please without an additional fee. That's something that you want to calculate in your cost when you're doing your research. You also obviously want to ask about the employment rate and success rate of graduates, right? And I spoke to this earlier at CCS, but our current graduation rate is higher than both the national average and the traditional private college average, right? So our students are graduating and working in the fields that they are majoring in here at CCS. So again, our graduation rate is 62%. That's something that you want to ask the colleges that you're researching. Um, and you also want to ask about the career opportunities that students have access to while they're currently students in the program, right? So we call this at CCS industry in the classroom or career development. What opportunities do students have to connect to their industry? At CCS, for example, we have paid only internships that we connect students to. We don't believe in students working for free, right? Again, banishing that starting artist myth. So some schools may offer both paid and free internships. We only offer paid internships. We have something at our school called sponsored studio projects, where students in their classroom setting, in their studios, are working in tandem with an organization or company and solving for their design needs or their art needs. So for example, in Detroit, we have the Little Caesars Arena. It's our major arena for hockey and basketball. They've paid CCS to work with our students, grade our students scholarships. And in the classroom setting, for example, our fine art students were working on public artwork displays for that client and getting real-time feedback from a client as a classroom assignment. So imagine being a student working on a sculpture in fine arts, having a client give you feedback, and then that sculpture goes into production. And you can have in your portfolio a piece that was produced for a real client. That's the benefit of sponsored studio projects. We've actually had students doing sponsored studio projects for Nike and have their shoes put into production. Again, think about how those things set a student's portfolio and resume apart. And then different schools may have different other opportunities for connecting to their industry. At CCS, we have something called Industry Day. When it's our normal situation, companies are actually coming to campus to view student work and portfolios and offering jobs and internships to students without them having to step foot off campus. But we also have ways that we're connecting students with the industry digitally. We have students who are learning from people in the industry via Zoom and connecting with people that way. So there are a lot of ways that students are connecting to the industry, and that's something that you want to ask the schools that you are considering. And then you also clearly want to ask about fit. Yes, college is heavily about a student preparing for the industry in their career and their life after school, right? And that's really what CCS touts, is what sets us apart, is that we prioritize and focus on making sure students are ready to hit the ground running, even prior to graduation with their career. That's what we focus on. But cultural fit is important. You want to visit schools and get an authentic feel for the culture, for the people. We actually currently have a lot of ways where students can virtually visit CCS. They can do a virtual visit with our student ambassadors and check out our dorms. They can go and look at the facilities online and see what tools are accessible to them. So that's something you can do while you're at home now. And when schools and everything are back open, visiting in person is a great way of getting a feel for culture and fit. You know, meeting the people that you'd be peers with. And then also asking about school culture. Are there clubs, right? Does the school offer Greek societies or sports, if that's something a student is interested in? For example, CCS's football team has been undefeated since 1906, and that's because we don't have a football team. We don't have sports. And so if that's something that's really important to a student, they want to know that ahead of time, right? Versus a school that a large university that may have an art program but also offers sports. So these are the things that students want to look into and research as they're making their decision criteria and applying to these schools. Okay. So the last thing that I want to talk about is letting your student lead the process. When your student steps on campus for orientation, they will be stepping into a more independent life. And helping them be proactive in the transition to college is the best thing you can do for helping to reduce stress and anxiety and give them a good foothold on what it's like to manage their lives for themselves. Involving them in the process can reduce this anxiety because it helps them to understand what it's like to work with college level priorities. So we always tell students and parents to have the student create their criteria, their own criteria list. for what's important to them for college, right? Parents, you can have your own list, but making sure students have their list as well. And then have those students actually go through after they've done this research and make a list of how each school measures up based on those criteria, right? So if you've evaluated how important is fit, how important is student life, how important is living on campus, how important is career success, have the student assess what those schools are offering in regards to those things, right? It's really, really important. Also, we say let them complete their own application forms. I know that sounds silly, but we have a lot of parents who actually enter their own information instead of their child's information because they're filling out the application for their student, right? This is their college career, right? And so we want students to be involved and fill out their own application forms and submit their personal information. Again, we have a lot of students, parents entering their cell phone numbers. And then when we text students about their work or about student events or things that are specific to them, the parents are like, oh, can you also message this to my student? Or the student's saying, oh, I didn't get that message from you. And that's because we want students to fill out their own application and inquiry forms, right? If you're applying to a school that doesn't have a spot for parent information on their inquiry form, you can reach out and request that that's added to your student's record so you can receive communication. But at CCS, that is a part of the application and our inquiry form. So as a parent, there is a space for you to enter your information to continue to get the information that you need, separate from what we're messaging to your student, right? I don't want to text a parent and tell you I'm coming to visit your classroom and I look forward to seeing your work, right? I want to give that message straight to your student. And then another important part about having your student lead this process is that we want students to start to build connections with their admissions counselors as early as possible. We don't want students waiting until senior year to ask us to review their work, ask us their questions, let them know that they're passionate and interested in CCS. It's much easier to advocate for students, to build students' portfolio, to give them the advice that they need when they message us in sophomore and junior year, right? And so I know for myself, I have students who I met when they were a sophomore who are currently here or applying, and it's much easier to give them feedback on their work because I've been working with them for years, right? This gives you an on-campus advocate, and that's irreplaceable, right? And you want to do that for all the schools you're considering applying to, asking, can I connect with my admissions counselor now? It can also help your student if you're transferring from another school. Your student can actually save themselves from many headaches by connecting with the school they're interested in, specifically the transfer counselor. At CCS, our transfer counselor is Eric Castor. Connecting with him allows you to learn what credits will transfer in advance, right? This can vary per college, but it can also impact the amount of time a student is in school. It can impact how much school costs. I can't tell you how many students they go and they assume that CCS is too much. They go to community college for 2 years and they find that they still have 4 years at CCS, right? Or that some of the classes they took don't transfer. And that could have been avoided had they connected with us early on. And we also are on sites like Transferology, which can help students with understanding the equivalency guides. But again, we highly recommend actually connecting with an admissions counselor to create a transfer plan for those of you who are interested in transferring. Do not go it alone. We are here to help. That is our whole job, and we love doing it, right? So again, number 5, parents, yes, be involved. Help your students, but make sure they are leading the process, okay? And I want to conclude with one bonus tip for students out there. There's this Japanese concept called ikigai, and it's a reason for being. I often tell students that your purpose in life is a combination of 4 things. It's what you love to do, what you feel the world needs, what you're good at, and what you can get paid for, right? Because we don't want you to do something that you love and you feel the world needs, but you are a starving artist, right? That's not a thing that we want, right? And we also don't want you to do something you love and that you're paid to do, but you don't understand how it applies to the world, how you're making a difference, right? Because you don't want to look up at 40 and feel unfulfilled, right? And we definitely want to make sure you're good at the thing you love. As a high school student or even a transfer student, you have a good understanding now of what you love And you might even have an understanding of what you feel the world needs, how you want to make a difference in the world. The role of a college is to help you become good at that thing and connect to the opportunities to get paid to do that for the rest of your life. Like Veronica Bagiach, who came to CCS for illustration. When she came to illustration at CCS, she took a class where she applied those illustration skills to textiles and found that that's the difference that she wanted to make in the world. She loved doing that. And she's now a graphic designer working on the textiles and patterns for Reebok, right? She found a way to take what she loved doing, find the way that she wanted to make a difference in the world, and get paid to do that because she's so great at it. Another great example is Corey Booth. He came to CCS knowing that he loved animation, right? Loved the idea of working with the cartoon industry. And he came through our illustration program. And he didn't have Disney level work, right, as a student, but he showed us his potential, worked with his career, worked with his, admissions counselor, was accepted to CCS where he started to grow those skills. And now Corey is a freelance graphic painter for Disney. For Disney Animation Studios. He's worked on a lot of cartoons that you all probably seen. And he grew those skills and he's doing what he loves for a living. Darby Barber is a great example that the path may not be straightforward, but pursuing that path is still important. This was in her high school portfolio. It was an illustrated piece that showed us her unique thinking, showed us her beginning skills for rendering, her foundation skills. But she came to CCS for transportation design, right? This is not a car that got her into CCS, but it's what allowed her to come in to learn that skill, to become good at that thing she was interested in. And actually, when she was a student at CCS, she was on a TV show called Motor City Masters, where she was the only student competing against people in the industry. It's kind of like Project Runway or Face Off, where they were competing and designing vehicles. And she was holding her own as a student, which allowed her to obviously set herself apart. And as a graduate, she's now a creative designer at General Motors, right? Empowering your students to live to their fullest potential and pursue their dreams has an impact on their lives far beyond the 4 years of college, right? And Martha Graham says it beautifully. She says there's a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there's only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and it will be lost. We don't want your students' energy, their life force, their talent, their passion to be lost because of a fear of applying to art and design school. We want them to be empowered. We want you to be empowered to have your students complete this process and end up successful. And that's why we hosted this webinar today, to give you these tips and advice. And so I want to, before we move on to opening the floor for questions, do one more poll. Knowing what you know now, seeing this information that we shared here today, I want to ask you all, how are you now feeling about having your student apply to a college for art and design? I want you to go back to that poll that we pulled up earlier. And the link is here on the screen, pollev.com. And just let us know how you're feeling with this information. Okay, we see some folks are excited. Some folks are feeling confident and still looking for some additional tips and tricks. Okay. Awesome. We're seeing much more excitement than earlier, which is a great thing to see. That makes me excited. I'm going to give a few more seconds here to answer that poll, and then we are going to open the floor for questions. Awesome. I see that nervousness went away, which is really exciting to see, and less confusion. Okay. So I am going to go ahead here. And if you're still filling out the poll, feel free to continue doing that. The link will stay relevant. I am going to go ahead and open up the questions section of my webinar here and restart my video. Hello again. And let's see what questions we have. Oh, we see not a question, but someone saying hello. Hello from Livonia. Are there any other questions? Can you touch on the informal reviews again? Yes, that is a great question. So the way informal reviews specific to CCS works is that students, they are assigned an admissions counselor based on their high school or the state you all live in. By connecting with, there are a few different ways to get an informal review. The easiest is to email admissions@collegeforcreativestudies.edu. Our admissions office will connect you directly to your admissions counselor, and you can ask them to review your work, and they'll offer the different ways that you can review it. There are a lot of different options. One we actually have on the portfolio page of our website, where students can simply upload a few images to our website, enter their basic information, hit submit, and someone will follow up in the way that they best prefer. So you can indicate whether you want to be followed up with a video call or with email or text, and they'll follow up with feedback that way. We have students who, when campus is open, come in person and get informal portfolio reviews during open houses or things like that. So that's a way to get review. If our students are connected with us on social media, I know both Sabrina and I are active on social media. Students can actually send their work in the DMs, hit us up in our DMs and send us their work and get feedback that way. And so what an informal portfolio review is simply we're looking at a body of students' work and telling them what their current strengths are, what their areas for improvement are, and if they ask and they're interested, we let them know if they're admissible with the current body of work that they have. Oftentimes students are surprised to find that with their informal review, they're not only admissible, but for a high level of scholarship, and it relieves a lot of stress of having to go through and figure out work on their own. If a student is admissible and they want us to use an informal review for their final review, we can do that as well. Also, ACAD, if you're applying to a lot of different schools, ACAD, that Association for Independent Colleges of Art and Design, has a slide room portal where students can submit their work and request to have their work informally reviewed by several colleges. And that's for any grade level as well. So as a 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader, you can go into the ACAD slide room, sign up, and request all the colleges at once to review your work. Some colleges may use that for a final admissions decision, so you want to ask those schools before you do that, but that is another way of getting informal portfolio feedback. All right, I see another question by, so thank you, we'll check for that question. I see another question by Fadi. How do you submit the digital artwork like a short film? So short films, the best way to submit those for feedback is typically for students to upload those to YouTube or Vimeo and send the links. We don't want students to have to send a gigabyte large file for feedback. But they can upload those and send those links and we can review video. I do typically advise for students to send, if they have, for example, a feature-length movie they worked on, a 60-minute film, that's pretty hard for us to juggle looking at several large format videos. So we typically may say send shorter pieces or a reel of their work. And sometimes, just looking at a question, sometimes with video students, because video may be more difficult to produce, they may only have 3 videos. If that's the case for a student, we'll let them know that about a minute of film is equivalent to 1 portfolio piece, right? So if a student is looking to meet, at CCS, our portfolio requirement is 8 to 12 pieces, depending on the major you're applying for. For all of them except concept design, is 8 to 12 pieces. For students to submit video for that, we say, if you send 3 3-minute videos, for example, that would cover the admissions requirement for that. But again, we can give feedback on film and suggestions for edits or things to change to make your work stronger. Okay. Any other questions? These are great questions. I see someone raise their hand. Oh, I see more questions are popping up in my Q&A box. Here we go. Okay. Let's see. So an anonymous attendee asks, since campus visit tours are not happening now, are there video tours of housing? Yes, we have a video tour of housing that our student ambassadors recorded. I'm going to see if Carla can share that in the chat box here. Let me know if you can't find it, Carla. But yes, there is a video tour walking through both the Topman and Ford campus housing options. And it shows not only what the individual suites look like, but it also shows the amenities like our workout facilities, etc. Okay. Let's see who else has a question. These are great questions. All right, let's see. Someone says, I understand there are some types of digital art that are not accepted as part of the portfolio. Why is this? I'm not sure who asked that question. I don't know of any forms of digital art that we do not accept at CCS. I don't know if you mean a specific file format, like submitting a Photoshop file or something, but we have students submitting video, submitting 3D work, submitting graphic design, digital illustration. We don't have a cap on digital art. Some schools require traditional work versus digital art. We do not at CCS. We'd like to see if a student has traditional skills, but we don't have a medium requirement for the pieces in a student's portfolio. So students are able to work digitally or traditionally to submit their work. And I see that Carla is having a little issue finding the housing link. So I'm going to copy and paste that really quickly into the Zoom chat. But I hope that answered the question for the person who had a question about different types of digital artwork. Again, if there's something that's asked here that we don't get in a proper answer for you, please email the admissions email address here on the screen, and we'll make sure to get you the specific answers that you need. All righty, so I'm actually going to have Carla share. Carla, did you want to share your screen to show some of the links that were mentioned? I think she's pulling up links as we're going along so folks can see where this information is. All right, so I'm going to share a few links for touring campus, including that the link for. Whoop. Oh, there's Carla's screen. Thanks, Carla. I'm going to post these links in the chat for the videos for the housing tour. All righty, so more questions. Is a portfolio of one medium okay, or is it better to have variety? That is an amazing question. Thank you for that question, Katie. So at CCS, we emphasize quality over quantity of medium. So we tell students, if you worked on photography and film and you've made a sculpture once, do not put that sculpture in there that shows you've done it if it's not your strongest work. We definitely want to see your strongest skill set. And the portfolio requirements for CCS aren't specific to majors. So for example, if a student is interested in film but has not recorded any film, they can submit a portfolio of all photography as an example, or a mixture of photography and drawing as an example. We do have, the only specific requirement that we have is for transportation design, illustration, animation, and video game design. We do need to see at least 5 drawings in a student's portfolio. Those drawings can be traditional or digital. They can be any subject matter. We just want to see their drawing skills, showing some of their foundation drawing understanding. And outside of those 5 pieces, again, their portfolio can be any medium. So a student interested in animation can show 5 drawings and then have, you know, an animated piece, or they could have some puppets that they made, right? So it could be a mixture. For concept design, there are much more nuanced details. We're looking for how a student is visualizing a story in 4 areas. So in character, environment, architecture, and hardware. So tools or vehicles. And we're looking, that's a competitive major at CCS. So the portfolio requirements I'm gonna have Carla share in the chat, those are very specific. So we wanna make sure that students are connecting with their counselor and looking at the specific requirements for that major. Okay. Let's see. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, will the fall 2020 term be postponed? Carla, do you want to chime in on the answer to this? As I understand it, that is not the case. We are anticipating starting our semester as we normally do.
Sure, I'm happy to, okay, I'll put my video on. Hi, everybody. So I'm Carla, I'm Director of Admissions, and I can tell you that we are working to make sure that we can start fall 20 as anticipated. Right now, there is no plan to postpone. We are very, I mean, at this point, we feel confident that fall will start up as it's been planned. So that's how we're moving forward, and we look forward to seeing everybody in late August.
Yes. Thank you, Carla. How recent should, next question is, how recent should all portfolio pieces be? That's a great question. We typically tell students within the last year or two of high school. It typically is because their strongest work is their most recent work. And if you're a transfer student, just the most recent work you've worked on, especially if you're a transfer student who's been out of high school for a while, don't submit work that you did 5 years ago, because we want to see your current skill and make sure you're properly prepared for the classes that you're stepping into at CCS. But your most recent work is typically your last 2 years at school. Someone's excited to attend this fall. We're glad that you are. Let's see. What % of students are employed in their field upon graduation? So at CCS, the way that we calculate our employment rate is based on a survey that we send out to all of our graduates. And for those who respond, that's what most schools use as their employment rate. Ours is 98%. So 98% of the students, and it's a decent number of our students who apply, say that they are not only employed after graduation, but employed in their field of art and design once completing the program at CCS. Again, speaking from experience, graduated in 2011, CCS didn't give me a break. I started working 4 days as an art director. I work in admissions, yes, but I am an art director. Started working 4 days after graduation. So we have a lot of students who hit the ground running because of those internships, our sponsored studio projects, and our industry day opportunities. So hopefully that answers that question. Do we have a list of employers who graduates are employed by? Yes, on our website, actually, for each of the majors, there is a list that shows, and I'll see if I can pull this up here, or actually Carla's sharing her screen. But when you go and click into your major, there's a list of where our students are employed. We also have a list of where our students have interned. We actually have a YouTube video for our online open house, and we'll be doing this presentation live in April. But if you want to see a pre-recording of that information, we have a list in that presentation as well of some of the many companies where our graduates are going on to work. And if you're looking for a specific company and you have questions and you don't see it listed, you can message us and ask, because sometimes there are more than where are listed online. But yes, we do have lists for each of the majors on the website where our graduates are employed. And then we also have specific documents for different majors that show more in-depth insights about not only where those students are employed, but what states they go to, what their salary range is. So for example, communications design has a full PDF booklet, a document that we can send you with more in-depth information. So outside of your own research on our website, make sure to reach out to a counselor and ask, and we can provide you additional insight. All righty. Let's see. Can you decide whether you get into the Topman or Ford housing? Yes, so students can apply for either. Typically, students who are freshmen, we prioritize them for the Topman. It has more of a dorm feel. Very nice dorms, but more of a dorm feel versus the apartment style housing in the Art Center building, but students can choose either option. And if an option is full, I don't know if you're looking into fall 2020 or 2021, typically housing is, we look at housing on a first come, first served basis, and it fills up fast. There's high demand for housing because it's very nice, and Detroit is a up and coming city, up and coming area is where our school is located. And so there's high demand for just housing in general. And so students, if they are signing up and they see one of the housing options are full, can sign up for the wait list and indicate where they'd like to be placed once they're evaluated from the wait list. So for example, if the Art Center building or ACB was full on the Ford campus and someone wanted to stay on the Ford campus, they could still apply for Topman and indicate on the wait list option that they're interested in the Ford campus. And we do look to evaluate our incoming freshmen for housing and make sure that they can be placed. That's a great question. Does the meal plan include vegetarian options? That's very specific, and the answer is yes. We have vegetarian, vegan, and gluten-free options on our menu. And at our school, we have two separate cafeterias for the two campus sites. And so the Tottenham campus is our more full-service diner. It has multiple stations, like a salad bar, fresh-made sandwiches, a grill, things like that. But then we also have on our Ford campus, a smaller cafeteria with meals that can be made to go. And then we also have something called our 24-hour market, where students can go beyond the hours of our cafeteria and get fresh made food options that are made in the cafeteria and are stored. So if someone wants to get a salad at 3 a.m., they can do that. But the answer to your question is yes, we have vegetarian options. I'm not a vegetarian, but I like to eat vegetarian, so I can vouch for that. Let's see. So I answered the question about list of companies for internships. And again, if you want to see more specifics, you can reach out to counseling. Are there summer school classes still expected to be offered this summer? So currently, and I'll let Carla chime in on this. Carla, can you speak to the pre-college summer experience and summer classes that CCS is offering?
Sure thing. I turned on my light, but it doesn't help. I look like a ghost still. Sorry about that. So yeah, right now the plan is to run the pre-college summer experience. The dates for that are July 12th through the 31st. So it's later in the summer. And again, we feel like we have to monitor the situation, obviously, but we feel that there is time for things to settle down before then. So the plan is to have it continue as planned. Obviously, if we make a different decision on that, or if we're forced to make a change, we would certainly do that. Safety is, of course, the first priority, but we would be communicating any changes about that out to students who may be interested and or have already registered for that program.
Thank you, Carla. Awesome. Next question is, can you switch your major? This is a yes and no question. Yes, you can always switch your major. It does have an impact on your curriculum at CCS because students are taking 4 years of studio specific to their major. And so if a student comes in, for example, as a communications design student or advertising student or craft student, and they change to transportation design, they're going to then have to start over with their freshman studio for transportation design. And so that can alter their degree path as far as how long they're at CCS. And so we oftentimes encourage students to, if they're, aside from choosing undeclared, which is a path, if you want to come in undeclared and start to figure out your major while you're at CCS, if you're weighing between two really close options, say you're choosing between advertising and communications design or between illustration and entertainment arts. For students like that, we often encourage them to talk to an admissions counselor early on or talk to faculty, which we can connect you with, and start to understand the nuances between the two so they can start off freshman year with the choice that's best for them. Another thing to note is that all of our majors can also be taken, all of our majors except for transportation design, can be taken as a studio minor. So if you're interested in majoring in photography but minoring in digital film, you could do that as well at CCS. And then obviously with our art education program, that functions like a dual major. It's not a dual major, but students can pursue their bachelor's degree at the same time that they're pursuing their certification to teach kindergarten through 12th grade. And so that impacts time if, for example, a student declares art education later in their curriculum and may change their time. So yes, you can change your major, but we oftentimes want to make sure students are feeling as confident as possible about the major that they're stepping into, or are really exploring the undeclared opportunity at CCS to build that confidence. Okay.
Randy, we have a question from YouTube, and I just wanted to make sure that they get heard as well. Question about whether or not students also take quote unquote regular gen ed classes.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier about 2/3 of our curriculum are studio classes. The remaining third, which is typically equivalent to about 42 out of the 126 credits to graduate, So 42 credits are general education classes. Students are still taking history and English. They may have a math or science requirement that they're taking. The thing that's unique about generally art and design schools, but specifically CCS, is that our general education classes are specific to art and design students. So as an example, instead of taking a generic history 101, they may be taking the history of animation or the history of interior design. Right, their business class at CCS, which all students are required to take as part of their general education requirements, it's specific to understanding business from an art and design perspective, right? Writing contracts, understanding business plans, freelancing versus working in an industry. So yes, we have general education classes. Students who are taking those at CCS are getting a much more specific type of general education class versus a student who may take a general education class at community college and transfer that credit in. Do we have screen printing equipment? Very specific, and the answer is yes. We have a wonderful printing department located in our fine arts department. All students who take the classes are able to use the equipment, but we have screen printing, silk screening, intaglio, like any form of printmaking that you can probably think of. We have that equipment on campus for students to use. So for example, letterpress printmaking, etc. And examples of what those facilities look like are in that video tour that we linked out to. All right. Does the transportation design happen in the Todman building? Yes. So for those of you who aren't familiar with our campus is divided by two sites, the Ford campus and the Todman Center for Art and Design. All of our majors ending in the word design have their studio classes in the Todman building. So transportation design, as an example, would have their studio classes in the Todman building, but they may have their liberal arts or gen ed classes and foundation classes on the Ford campus. We have a 24-hour shuttle that runs between the two campuses. They're about a mile apart, so a student wouldn't have to drive and repark. You know, they could. It's walking distance for some or biking, but we have a 24-hour shuttle that takes students between the two campuses. Roland, about the laptop requirement, I'm going to have Carla link out to the laptop requirements and recommendations for our school. Currently, we only have laptop requirements for two of our majors. That's communications design and advertising design. Those students are the only that we require to have a laptop. Everyone else we provide recommendations for. And that being because we have all the facilities and equipment that students need on campus to produce the work for their studios. And we have 24-hour computer labs. We have an audiovisual resource center where students can rent out tablets, they can rent out cameras, they can rent out, Wacom pens, things like that. And so we don't want students to go unnecessarily buying equipment or software, especially before they even start the program, without seeing if that's necessary for them in their curriculum. So we'll link out to that page of the website, but know that we don't always encourage students to go out and buy a laptop right away unless they're in those majors that require the laptop. Okay. So hopefully that answered that question. I see Carla shared the link. How feasible is it to do a minor and a major at CCS? What are the most common options for a minor? Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know the percentage of commonality. I know that it's not uncommon for a student to do a major and a minor. I did a major and a minor. Some students who come in with AP credit or transfer credit, they want to stay full time, and so they use the opportunity for a minor to stay at full-time status. But as far as the most common option, it really varies depending on a student's major, right? So we have a lot of students who may major in advertising and minor in graphic design, right? Or vice versa. Versus we have a lot of entertainment arts and illustration students who minor in the opposite, right? Craft students may, product design students may minor in crafts so they can better make their prototypes. The minor that students choose typically is more related to the major that they have versus a general consensus. I don't know, Carla, if you have any additional information on that, but typically we see things working that way.
I think that's an accurate portrayal. I think sometimes people are interested in finding something that is a complement to what they're already doing in their major, versus being something completely unconnected to it. But that's not, you could do that too if you really wanted to. But I think what we tend to see is that students will have some kind of connection, and looking at a minor as a way to broaden a skill set, and sort of bring added value to their portfolio and their resume. I feel like I'm Luke
Yeah, I see
Skywalker on the.
sorry. I see that same individual asked about minors for transportation design. One thing to know, I don't know if you have already looked into our transportation design program, but we have nuanced areas of focus within transportation design. So beyond sophomore year, students are really funneling their skill sets for transportation design into one of three areas. So we have vehicle design for students who want to work on any type of vehicle, helicopter, yacht, motorcycle, etc. We have automotive design, so students who specifically want to work on designing cars. And then we also have mobility, so students who are thinking holistically about transportation systems, about the future of vehicle and transportation design as it impacts mass transportation, autonomous vehicle design, etc. And so because of those really specific focuses, students are, it's not essentially, it's not a minor, but it functions as one in the sense that students are getting a general transportation education and then a focused one within the curriculum. If a student wanted to add to the transportation design major, say you wanted to minor in crafts or minor in something that you are more interested in, right? Fine art. That would potentially, depending on the credits that you come in with, add more time to your curriculum. That's not always the case. Depending on the major, some things fit in better, but I know transportation, because of those focus areas, is a very jam-packed curriculum at our school. So that's something to consider. One thing I'll make mention of is that we also, in addition to connecting with our admissions counselors, have student ambassadors, currently enrolled students that you all can connect with. Typically, we have students connecting with our student ambassadors to ask them more about their experience as students, and that's a great way of understanding too. You know, I can tell you what's possible, but a student can tell you what it feels like, right? To minor in something as a transportation design major, for example, or a product design major. So the way to connect with our student ambassadors is through the ambassadors email. So it's just ambassadors@collegeforcreativestudies.edu, or through our student ambassadors Instagram, which is at CCS_connect. And then one thing, thank you, Carla. One thing I also want to mention is our education that's as different from a minor because it comes with an additional credential. So for students who are pursuing their major at CCS and also choosing art education, they're graduating with their bachelor's degree and the certification to teach. So they're learning their education requirements. They're doing their in-classroom teaching hours, their student teaching hours, so that they graduate with that credential. Versus a minor, which would appear on your diploma, is just additional credits, about a semester's worth in another area of study. All righty, and then I see one other question is, when is the full payment due? I believe that has not changed, and tuition bills go out August 1st for the foreseeable future, unless something changes with the start date. Typically, tuition bills go out August 1st. Know, though, that we have payment plan options for students who are coming in. And so the full payment wouldn't be due, obviously, if you signed up for the payment plan. It'd just be your first payment.
Sorry, there's a correction, Brandy. It's
thank you, Carla.
Bills go out July 1st.
Oh.
Due August 1st. But there are payment plans. Obviously, you don't have to pay the full amount up front. That's difficult for many families. So just be aware that there are payment plans that you can pay over a 12-month period.
All righty. Were there any more questions from YouTube before we end today? Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone who tuned in today. It was really amazing having this conversation with you all and having so many of you tune in today. This will be recorded and we will be sending out the recording. And for those of you tuning in on YouTube, you know that the YouTube live link will be there as well beyond today. So please feel free to go back over and review this information and reach out to us. We are dedicated and more than eager to help you pursue your college career path, right? And